Good evening, and welcome to the UCSF COVID-19 Hackathon Showcase Finale, hosted by the UCSF Launchpad and the UCSF Catalyst Program. I am Nate Prora, Program Manager with the Catalyst Program and EIR with the Launchpad. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the justified outrage and grief as a result of ongoing racial injustice. At UCSF, to paraphrase Chancellor Sam Hawgood, we have a responsibility to speak out against violence, and we firmly denounce acts of racism, hate, bias, and discrimination of all kinds. Not only do we denounce it, we also must take action to eliminate it and continue the hard work of dismantling the structural barriers of racism in education, research, employment, and healthcare. We can do better. We must do better. And I believe we will. What gives me unequivocal hope and inspiration that this is possible is how over the past 3 weeks, roughly 400 participants and mentors from around the world, including from many of the world's preeminent education, research, and technology institutions, have teamed up to design new, innovative, and technical solutions to the health, medical, and scientific challenges we face due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Projects have ranged from innovative mental health applications, fascinating telehealth models, pioneering medical devices and PPE, state-of-the-art epidemiology and public health solutions, as well as cutting-edge therapeutics and diagnostics. All of these innovative and elegant solutions have come so far since their initial video submissions, and all their hard work, creativity, and collaboration is both inspiring and making a real difference in the fight against the novel coronavirus. During tonight's showcase finale, we would like to use our platform to highlight 6 hackathon projects and provide an opportunity for these project teams to interact with the hackathon judges. Now, I'd like to introduce Jenny Jancy, Campus Director of the Launchpad and Program Director with the Catalyst Program.
Thanks, Nate. We want to start out by thanking all of those involved in bringing this hackathon to reality. A big thank you to our judges who have reviewed all of your video submissions. We have leaders in medicine, law, medical device, entrepreneurship, and telehealth. We have data scientists, epidemiologists, and venture capitalists. All of your project teams will be receiving their feedback to help you guide you on your next steps of bringing your products to reality. I'd like to say a huge thanks to our sponsors. These companies listed here have donated cash prize money and services of extremely high value to your startup projects and companies. We will be announcing all prizes in the coming days, so please stay tuned for that. These sponsors are organizations that typically offer funding and partnering opportunities. They have graciously donated mentorship sessions to select project teams. Likewise, these incubators and accelerators have also donated interview and mentorship sessions to be awarded to select hackathon projects. Finally, I would like to thank our mentors. They have helped both us as organizers with running the hackathon, and even more so, they have also lent a hand to many of our project teams with one-on-one advice. As Nate mentioned, all of the hackathon teams have accomplished so much during these 3 weeks. While 6 teams will be presenting during this showcase in order to represent the diversity of innovative solutions to our COVID-19 issues, we would also like to highlight several other projects briefly, and we'll do so later this evening as well. So included in each slide, which will be available on our website after this event, is their contact information for you to follow up with them in the future. The first team is Project EpiWe. This is a program that combines self-reporting with telemedicine and self-testing to reduce exposure to COVID-19 and enable society to reopen. The Doctors Academy Student Tracker is an interface to keep the next generation of health professionals on track. NEVAP is a device company that has developed a better breathing tube holder, which reduces bacterial infection and ulcer formation. As a preventative health technology company, DocMe uses computer vision technology to monitor key vital signs just from a selfie. Be Informed is a clinically driven, comprehensive desktop and mobile infectious disease, epidemic, and pandemic management tool, targeting suppression and containment of diseases such as COVID-19. And the Immunolink offers intelligent guidance for antibody testing using blockchain and artificial intelligence. I would now like to introduce our first showcase presenter, Bunny Papper, offering an innovative PPE solution.
Bunny Papper can help us get back to normal. Imagine it is January 2020. You hear about COVID-19 and follow the steps everyone was taught in school.
Grab your viral helmets.
No lockdowns or social distancing. How much would we pay for this? $2,000 would even be a bargain. Bunny Papper is available for $30 per person. We can't turn back time, but we need something for this virus and the next. Bunny Papper.
Our core hackathon team is advised by the inventor, Dr. Guy Kuo. Our dozens of collaborators range from 16 years old to 60 plus, from India to Brazil. The problem Dr. Kuo was addressing was the medical problem of N95 shortage. As we've pivoted, we realized that a deeper challenge is the societal problem. How do we safely, socially undistance everyone and get back to normal?
It's this social undistancing that will help reopen these billion-dollar industries.
Unforgettable is Dr. Kuo's favorite restaurant, so he offered the owner, Sally, a bunny papper. With COVID-19, Sally's been afraid of getting her older family sick. Putting it on, she said, "Wow, I can wear my glasses and they don't fog up." She now feels safe having the restaurant open.
Bunny Papper costs at most $30 with hospital-grade viral protection on the input and the exhaust.
Bunny Papper scales easily and quickly because it is made out of 4 commodity parts: a fan, a filter, a bag, and a battery, plus 1 custom plastic part.
Hello, I'm Dr. Guy Kuo. I'm an anesthesiologist in Seattle. I invented the Bunny Science Powered Air Purifying Respirator, or Bunny Science Papper for short.
I wanted a way to protect myself and my colleagues from the virus, and felt like none of the current measures were enough. Commercial pappers are great, but shockingly expensive and currently out of stock. The Bunny Papper takes air that might be contaminated with the COVID-19 virus, actively filters the virus from the air, and delivers clean air to the user. The Bunny Papper does all that and also protects the face. I've tested for oxygen, inspired CO2, and expired CO2. All are at safe levels. I've worn mine 11 straight hours, and I've worn it every day at the hospital for 2 months. I've shared it with my doctor friends, and Bunny Papper is under evaluation by many more. Hospital approval is rightly cautious, but unfortunately very slow. The Hackathon team has identified huge product potential outside the hospital, internationally and in normal life.
This is Jerry, a grandfather and engineer over 70.
Bunny Papper sure beats the ill-fitting cloth masks everyone else was wearing. I felt very secure.
Even before COVID-19, it was projected that the Papper market would grow by 6% by 2025. Contacting over 100 people, the Hackathon team found they mostly want N95s, but dozens were eager to try out Bunny Papper. The California dialysis nurse, the India ENT, or the isolated grandfather, they all have one thing in common: urgency.
Meet Dr. Brown, a Seattle area dentist. He tried using N95 masks, but a medical condition makes breathing difficult. With the bunny papper, he says, I can breathe again.
Humans are social creatures. In order to thrive, many need social interaction and physical contact. 30,000 NBA fans? 30,000 bunny pappers. Or Disneyland, Mickey Mouse with a bunny papper. More than 20 bunny pappers are currently in use across the United States. Our teams are working internationally with doctors in hotspots like Brazil, Malaysia, and India.
Bunny Papper's all-volunteer team has a motto, do good, not evil. To do good, we still need money. Bunny Papper will use the freemium model. The free basic model targets non-commercial humanitarian work.
The premium model offers upgrades like quieter fans and prettier hoods, and will be sold direct to consumer
and licensed to large companies.
Profits pay investors, but also fund free distribution. We want Bunny Papper in the hands of those who need it the most and who can afford it the least. Bunny Papper is affordable, hospital-grade COVID-19 protection for everyone today and makes us safe for the next pandemic. Bunny Papper, affordable protection for COVID-19 and beyond.
Very interesting work. Thank you, Howard, Jacqueline, and the Bunny Papper team. Now for a few questions. Dr. Elchin?
Yes, thank you, Nate. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the team for a very elegant design. And I say elegant because it's very functional, yet simple. And I take a look at this and I say even the conventional papper units used in hospitals have some disadvantages or drawbacks. And I think your unit is actually better because it's a lot lighter. It's going to be less obtrusive. I like the way that you have the headgear stabilizing everything, the fans and all the working components. And then also the neck strap is extremely important to get a good seal, yet be comfortable for long-term use. I have a couple of questions. The first one is, how important is it to have complete inflation maintained so that you don't get any visual distortion? And I know you're using the fans. I've bought some similar fans for some of my projects, and I know they can provide up to like 10 liters per minute of flow. What kind of flow do you find necessary for your device?
I'm happy to answer that. So this design is actually, we're about to submit the patent on that. The flows we're using are between 20 and 30 liters per minute. We've tried about 20 or 30 different fans and had to junk a lot of them. So that's your first question. And thank you for the, and can you repeat your other question?
You just answered my other question. My other question is, have you filed a patent application yet?
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, we're patent pending in a few days.
Great, thank you very much.
Great. And now for another question from Gerardo Noriega.
Hello, Howard. I concur with Al on his comments. I think your idea is very cool, very interesting, and very practical. It resembles somehow like a portable clean room. But as you know, when you have a portable clean room, it always gets very hot in the clean room, and it had to be connected to the air conditioning. How do you plan to mitigate such a, issue?
Yes, I will go ahead and answer that. It is the sense of people who've worn it that the air from the fan is sufficient to do that. And we also we'll be offering a model that has two fans where people who need more airflow, but it does keep the bag from fogging, and it should not be too hot in there.
So you have not experienced any discomfort with temperature within the bubble?
That's correct.
Great, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you guys very much. And now I'd like to introduce the Calm On team.
Our app is called Calm On. Our main objective is to educate children of ages 6 through 11 about emotional intelligence, healthy coping habits, as well as preventative ways of spreading COVID-19.
Researchers at San Diego State University and Florida State University have begun studies to quantify the mental health effects of COVID-19. They found that roughly 70% of Americans have experienced moderate to severe mental distress, triple the amount seen in 2018. This surge in mental distress was most prominent in young adults and children. In a short survey, 81% of people stated they would be open to trying an application that focuses on mental health. We conducted another survey for our target group, ages 6 to 11, which indicated that the majority of children's mental health was compromised due to the lack of a stable schedule and decreased interaction with friends.
We found that ACT and CBT techniques were the most successful for these younger children. ACT is acceptance and commitment-based therapy. CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. Through our app, we aim to teach children the necessary tools to discuss and process their emotions and help incorporate this in their lives.
To enhance the personalities of the characters and create an engaging experience for the user, we created an animation that brings characters to life. The user of the app is stuck at home during the lockdown. They miss their friends, the outside world, and they feel so down in the dumps. But when a mysterious light shines into the sky, it opens up a portal for our magical life coaches to reach out and be their friend. Here, we meet our life coaches for the mind, body, and spirit. Meet Aurora, Flynn, and Sprite. Thus forward here on out, this is where our magical friendship begins.
To reiterate, our research showed that the number one thing that children did not like about the pandemic was not being able to hang out with their friends. Through the integration of an AI chatbot, our app enables children to build a relationship with their new buddies, Flynn, Sprite, and Aurora. Each character provides specialized activities that will keep children entertained and educated.
Sprite embodies the spirit and helps users understand their emotions. The Storytime feature introduces kids to ACT through interactive stories and metaphors. For example, if a user would tap on accepting your negative feelings, it would bring you to a message-style interface where stories are told, similar to a choose-your-own-adventure. The mindfulness feature uses CBT techniques and introduces kids to activities they can do to help manage and alleviate unwanted emotions they are currently going through. For example, if they clicked on 5-4-3-2-1 technique, it will give the child a few strategies for grounding their anxieties and being in the present. Aurora's character embodies the mind. She has two features that promote CBT technique. Journaling has 3 different categories that users can choose from. Free write is where they can express their thoughts. Daily prompt is where the users are given a randomized prompt every day and they could respond, as well as positivity, where they can list out the different positives and reflect. So Flynn's character embodies physical health. So for the time being, healthy habits add kid-friendly COVID-related information, such as Do the 5, which are 5 simple steps on how to stop the spread of coronavirus, as well as a comic book style on how to properly wash your hands. These different features give the child the opportunity to ask questions or share their thoughts. The exercise feature promotes good health and suggests exercising videos that give the kid and parent or guardian a fun activity to do together.
As for the development team of the project, we want to implement a chatbot which can help children speak with a machine that can understand their emotion. And from focusing on the scope, we moved on to focusing on the platform of the system. We decided on going towards React Native, a new web-end system which can be run on any browser, so that our application can be run on both iOS and Android devices. Furthermore, we need to look at hosting. So for hosting, our decisions are between a server's central host or a cloud distributed host. These 2 different types of hosting need to be decided in the future, and it's what we are working towards right now.
Going forward, more user testing will be conducted on our designs and prototype in order to iterate and improve upon what we have so far. We would like to do a deeper exploration into the gamification of the app in order to encourage players to come back and check in with the incentive of in-game rewards and customization. Furthermore, we will continue adding more character animations, mindfulness techniques, storylines, and other content to keep the app informative and exciting as time goes on. We will also look into ways artificial intelligence can enhance the personalities and dialogue options of our characters. Though this app was designed with the intention that children could use it by themselves or with a parent. We hope to potentially partner with therapists in the future in order to provide more personalized therapy experiences for their younger clients. And that is all. Thank you for watching.
Great. Thank you very much, Kalman. Thank you very much to the Kalman team and everybody in your team from San Francisco State University. Now on the line, we have Angela Luong and Farah Wong to answer a couple questions. Rhonda, are you ready for your question?
I am, and congratulations to the team. This was another elegant and incredibly thoughtful solution that meets the children where they are, which is on their phones. And actually, I want an adult version. This looks really, really cool. So congratulations on a great project, a great presentation. My question though, being the filthy capitalist entrepreneurship faculty, I have to understand how you're going to make money and get this into the hands of people who need it the most. So that's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is around therapists. Have you talked to them, and do you anticipate that they will see this as competition or an extension of your service, an extension of their services?
Hi, so to answer your first question, we plan to still work on the app for free, like maybe in order to expand our team as students that are currently looking for jobs or doing some internships, because I know because of COVID, many people have not been working as much as they used to. So maybe this is an app that they can volunteer their time to and make it become something even bigger. And to answer your other question, we were thinking more of the lines of incorporating this with therapists, but not use it as like a competition against them. So maybe they would use it so it'd be more engaging with the client as well as the therapist. And we plan to also talk with them, since the project was had so little time, we weren't able to talk with therapists, but we plan to in the future interview multiple different therapists and see what they think about our app and how we could improve.
Yeah, to kind of add on to Farah's perspective, in order to increase budgeting in the future and the business side of it, I really want to expand more into the game designing in the future. Once we have the funding, once we have the budget, we're going to implement more game designing levels to engage the kids and the children to want to keep playing. And that's where we can add in more features that can not only complement the objective, where we can still educate them about mental health, and that's how skill building, and that's where the leveling kind of integrates. And so that's where we're hoping in the future of implementation of this app and the prototype.
Great, thank you. And I believe we have another question from Dr. Marlene Goranon.
Nate, if not, I have a question for the team.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, Dr. Blasich.
Yeah, I want to echo Rhonda's comments. Really elegant, and as the father of 2 kids in that target age group, I can attest to the fact that there really is a need to help support kids through the COVID-19 crisis. My question for you is, do you have evidence that AI-based interactions and therapies will have a net positive mental health benefit for children?
So we did research on different apps that were already available in the App Store, and I've seen some of them incorporated an AI chatbot function that allows the users to interact with the chatbot, and they've said that they've seen some benefit to that, but I want to research more on how it would benefit like kids and parents using it in conjunction.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, now we will continue to our next project. I'd like to introduce Dr. Jenny Ann, and she is presenting on the project titled Targeting Open Reading Frame 3A Mediated Inflammation. Dr. Ann?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. It's my great pleasure to present our project today. Our project is to screen drugs to target a major inflammation inducer of 3A in COVID-19 patients. You might have heard about, the next slide, please. Can I control? Yes, thank you. You might have heard about using chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine to limit inflammation in COVID-19 patients. Both chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine, they are autophagy inhibitors, and autophagy plays an important role in COVID-19 inflammation. Excessive inflammation induced by COVID-19 virus is the major cause of patient death. Therefore, limiting inflammation is an important way to reduce lethality of COVID-19 patients. However, chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine, they didn't work that well in clinics because of their toxicity and their lack of specificity. For our project, we are going to develop safe and specific drugs to target the major inflammation inducer of 3A in COVID-19 patients. Next slide, please. For our project to highlight, we have a world-class team, a unique target, a rationalized research program, and also a feasible timeline. Next slide, please. Our team includes experts in cell signaling and translational research, pharmacology, inflammation, and also large-scale screening and autophagy. So basically, our team covers all the field we are going to touch. Next slide, please. We are building a platform to screen drug candidates and then validate them. We are going to improve them, and also our major aim is to push them into clinical trials. Next slide, please. For the research program, first, let's look into the process development part. Next slide, please. So we are going to build a ORF3A GFP reporter line, and we are using small-scale proof of principle screens to do to test our platform first, and then we are doing large-scale screens using FDA-approved drugs and also bioreactive compounds. Next slide, please. And next, this is a very important step too. We have to validate the targets for the drugs because off-target effects is very often in small molecule drugs. Next slide, please. And to do that, we are going to study the mechanism of action, and we'll select the candidate and test their mechanism. We'll study their on-target and off-target effects using genetic and chemical validation methods. We're also going to study their toxicity because this is very important. We don't want a drug that has efficacy but also has high toxicity. We want to limit their toxicity and enhance their on-target effect. Next slide, please. And the last, I want to discuss about the enhancement part. Next one, please. So for the next part, we are going to do drug combination to test if there's any drug that can combine with the lead compound to work better to limit inflammation induced by COVID-19 virus. And we are also going to try if targeting OFF3A can target other coronaviruses. For example, the SARS viruses, and there are also several different viruses that express the OFF3A protein. It's pretty conserved, so we hypothesize that the drug that works on COVID-19 can probably be applied to other viruses too. And also working together with pharmacologists, we are going to improve the efficacy of the lead compound and reduce their toxicity by modifying the compound chemically. Next one, please. And we have a 2-year inflection points. And in those 2 years, we are going to finish compound identification, characterization, and optimization. And we are also planning to push the lead compound into phase 1 or 2 clinical trials. And we are selecting the lead compound, and we will initiate the clinical development to further improve the candidate, and then test them on COVID-19 patients and also other viruses. And also, in the 2 years, we are developing the combination pipeline using the lead compound and also other compound. Thanks so much, and I'll be happy to take any question.
Great, thank you very much, Dr. An. That's fascinating. We'd like to turn the question over to Dr. Robert Blazich.
Yeah, thank you for this ambitious project. Is there any consideration as to the cost of the drugs that you might develop? I'm thinking specifically of remdesivir, which has some efficacy, but the manufacturability means that it may be limited in the current pandemic.
Right, that's a great question. So currently we are using FDA-approved drug as an initial pool for the screening. And for many of those drugs, they are not that expensive. Like, for example, chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine, they are not that expensive, right? Because they have been out for many years. And depending on the leading compound, I think the cost will vary a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, and another question from Dr. Charles Hart.
Yeah, thank you, Nate. Jenny, can you elaborate just a little bit more on the cell-based screening assay? Are you going to be looking for drug candidates that modulate the expression of ORF3A or the activity of ORF3A or its interactions with other host proteins or viral proteins? What's really going to be the screening assay's readout?
So the readout will be the GFP signal. Basically, we're attaching a GFP fluorophore to the OFF3A protein, and then use GFP as a reporter to see like which drugs can limit the OFF3A protein level, because it's a major inflammation inducer. And we have some preliminary data showing that low OFF3A protein level in the cells can result in less inflammation cytokine expression in the cells. So we think limiting the protein level is really important.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. An. That was great.
Thank you.
We'd like to continue highlighting some of the other teams that have been part of this hackathon. Our next team is called Breath. It is an app that provides real-time guidance to healthcare providers to resuscitate newborns, given the limitations COVID-19 has created on staffing around the world. Next is the COVID-19 Early Detection Surveillance Team, offers a diagnostic solution through pooled screening. Coming out of the UCSF Surgical Innovations Program and the Roy Biodesign Lab, this team has designed a reusable antiviral respirator filter. Jadu Technologies offers a rapid test for COVID-19, eliminating the need for PCR amplification. And lastly, Dr. Xu Wang is developing a digital 3D guided precision injection method for delivering drugs directly to the lungs. So I'd now like to introduce showcase presenter Kaylee Wedderburn-Pugh, a UCSF MD PhD student with her team's project called Text COVID.
Hi, thank you so much. I hope everyone can hear me all right, but I'm Kaylee. I'm an MD PhD student here at UCSF. My teammates, Crystal and Lily, I went to undergrad with, and they're at Google and Hopkins on the East Coast, so we'll forgive them for that. But we really wanted to share our project, which was Text COVID, and so we can get started on that. So I think everyone here would agree that battling this pandemic has really come down to information. What we knew when this virus first started to spread versus when it came to the US versus yesterday or today or even tomorrow has really been about the information we've been learning, how to protect ourselves and how to protect the people that we love. And if you go to the next slide, you come to what we found over time is that not everyone has access to that information. And to get to the heart of that, I want you to think about how you access information about the coronavirus day to day. If you're using a fancy new website, you might be one of the 160 million Americans, yeah, we can go to the next slide, who don't have access to high-speed internet to load that fancy new web page. Or if you go to the next slide, you might be one of 16 million Americans who don't have internet at all. If you use your phone, you're on a good start. 96% of Americans have access to a cell phone, which you can see on the next slide. We have a lot of slides. But 96% have cell phones, so we're off to a good start. But if you're using an app, you'll see on the next slide, you might be one of 15% of people who don't have smartphones. And to make things worse, if you kind of break that number down, it's disproportionately affecting different groups. People who are over the age of 65, people who are making less than 30K a year, don't have access to the smartphones that would give them access to the apps that we're building. And we also know this has heavy overlap with the people who are most affected from the coronavirus. And that brings us to the problem that we wanted to tackle, which is how do we increase that access to up-to-date information about the coronavirus to the people who might not have access the ways we access this information typically? The people who don't have smartphones, the people who don't have high mobile data plans, the people who don't have regular access to the internet. And so we came up with Text COVID. Now I could hit you with all our fancy buzzwords that we're an automated texting service, that we're privacy forward, accessible, unified, easy to use. But if I had to tell you the truth, this is what we do on the next slide. You text us what you need. If you like, you can text us where you are, and we'll send you the best resources that we can find for you. If you go to the next slide, I can kind of break this down a little more. We decided to use text messaging because we thought that in this day and age, it's the thing that most of us can do. You don't need a smartphone. You don't need internet access. You can have a pretty limited data plan, but you can still text us, and we can still text you back. In terms of texting us what you need, we've kind of broken down information into 5 major categories that we think are really important in keeping yourself safe during this pandemic. Knowing the number of cases and the expected spikes in the few weeks and months to come are really important. Knowing where you can get tested if you have symptoms, and dealing with all the repercussions of a pandemic that's brought the world to a halt. Getting access to food, to housing, and unemployment support. And this is really what we focused on when we're building up our resources. On the next slide, we can talk about telling us where you are. Now, we're not interested in tracking you. But we know that a lot of times resources depend on the neighborhood that you're living in. And so by sending us your zip code, we can give tailored, curated lists for resources that we think can help you more directly. But again, in the interest of privacy, in the interest of trust, we know this isn't always what people want. And that's really what Text COVID is about. or building something that community members can use for the things that they need and nothing else. For the rest of this, I really want to talk about the technology behind what we've been working on for the past 3 weeks. If you go to the next slide, and the slide after that, we have a demo on our dev post page. We didn't want to have to navigate all the Zoom logistics in playing that here, but we encourage you to go watch and kind of see our text messaging service in action. But to talk on the next slide, I can take you guys under the hood. We based a lot of this in Python. It's how we're looking at through our databases, sending and receiving curated responses based on what you send us. Because it was 3 weeks, we didn't have a lot of time. So we used Twilio, which is an API that allowed us to program our SMS messaging. And we've compiled all our databases so far into CSV files that are easy to pull from. If you go on the next step, you see where we're heading to next. We want to automate a lot of this so that we can expand it and have people have more access to people instead of 3 people, coding in the middle of the night. We want to use natural language processing to make it more natural in how people are texting back and forth. Right now, it's a lot of you send me this number, I send you this response. We also want to start scraping data so that we can find even more resources that we're missing right now that could really make the difference for someone. And we also want to modify some of the menu options to make it, again, more personable. And our 30,000 view of this, is that we see Text COVID working with local organizations and city governments because we think that local efforts are the things that make the difference. It would be our dream if San Francisco City was able to use Text COVID to help San Franciscans and so on and so forth. And, shoot for the moon. We'd love to sit down with phone service providers and convince them that this kind of text messaging service that could provide these resources should be free of charge, so that you don't even need a basic mobile plan to send a text message when you need help. We challenge ourselves for this hackathon to answer the question, are our technologies and innovations helping the people who need it most, helping the people who are the most disadvantaged, who often when we innovate are left behind because they don't have access to the technologies that we're innovating on. And we really hope with Text COVID that we did just that, and we hope that you do too. So we want to thank you so much for your time. And we also want to take any questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Kaylee. This is fantastic and often overlooked and marginalized community. We'd like to turn over to questions now. So Rhonda, are you ready with a question?
I am. First of all, kudos and congratulations for a great project. I did see the video and I was incredibly impressed with how you really solved the problem of access to information for a population that needs it most. So kudos on keeping it simple and just focusing on the big buckets of information that people need first. I know how all of us felt when the world shut down. It was just a mad rush. Who do you listen to? Where do you go? And something like this could have been incredibly helpful. So in planning for the next one, we definitely need it. My question to you is, I know that you're planning to partner with city and local governments, but where are some of the communities that you plan to pilot this in? Because I assume you're going to have to do pilots before you can do a full rollout. And what community members, groups will you involve to roll this out in a trusted way to the community? I'd just like to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, and thank you for that question. I think it's something we've been talking a lot as the weeks have kind of come to a close. I think I'm obviously very biased that I just moved to San Francisco and I've fallen in love with the city, but I've also seen that it's kind of where this app might take place and be able to really take off. I know a lot of startups say the same thing, but we do have a lot of at-risk populations here who might benefit from something like this. We have unfortunately, a really large homeless population, but a population that still has access to cell phones. And a lot of San Francisco's resources, I'm sure you're familiar, we are trying to house as many people as we can in hotels. And that's something I heard on a website, I read on a website. I don't know how I would know that if I lived on the streets. And so giving people that information in the city of San Francisco might be a huge benefit. And, hopefully a city like San Francisco would be really amenable to piloting that.
Great. Thanks, Kaylee. Sharat, if you're there, we'd like to give you the opportunity to ask a question as well.
Yes, I'm here. Kaylee, congratulations on a fine choice of area to think about solving a problem which actually people in that sphere are desperate to survive even before they have to worry about COVID. And this, you can just feel the desperation come out in your presentation and video. How do you, could you say a little bit about how you plan to scalably keep the content fresh, refreshed in a way that covers enough ground to be of true benefit to this population?
So I can take this question. Oh, sorry, Kaylee.
No, Crystal, please take it.
So we didn't implement this in the hackathon duration, but we were talking about web scraping. And once we could web scrape with a little bit of like NLP in order to figure out what to web scrape. And that way we could be scraping from news sites and like Twitter and things like that, provided of course that we're following verified Twitter personalities and things like that, like people who say the governor of, California, things like that. But that way we could be getting up to date and accurate information.
Okay, thank you. Good luck.
Great. Thank you very much, Kaylee, Crystal, Lily, and the whole Text COVID team. All right. Now we're going to transition to NASA's computational vaccine project.
We address the need for an automated computational screening platform for accelerated vaccine design in this video. Making a vaccine is a difficult process. Several steps involved in designing and delivering them should be tailored precisely to induce an immune response. A vaccine introduces a part of the pathogen to train the host's immune system and produce antibodies to fight the disease. While most of the vaccines are made to target a specific pathogen, there is recent interest designing universal vaccines that can work against many similar pathogens. For example, universal vaccines designed for coronaviruses can be effective against different infections such as SARS, MERS and COVID, thereby avoiding the need to reinvent every time an outbreak happens. Vaccine development is expensive and time-consuming, as the experimental failure rates are high. Computational vaccine screening, on the other hand, can provide guidance to experimental design, predicting effective candidates early in the development process at a fraction of cost and time. Most of the existing computational tools have their own disadvantages. 1. They are difficult to use and requires significant background in programming and computational techniques. 2. They are not integrated and automated into a single framework for high-throughput screening. This limits the application of computational vaccine design for experimentalists. To bridge this gap, there is a necessity to develop tools that are friendly for experimentalists to use and integrated in a fashion for high-throughput design. The solution addressed here is the first step towards developing such a framework. An easy-to-use program should operate with minimal input and provide high-throughput predictions without user intervention. This is what we set to achieve here. A framework to automatically identify the conserved residues across viruses, find or predict their 3D structures, and calculate their affinity towards antibodies. The framework is demonstrated with the spike protein of coronaviruses as an example. In the foreground, the user inputs the uniport IDs of different coronaviruses like SARS, MERS and COVID. The IDs contain the sequence of the spike proteins of each virus. The user also inputs the length of the conserved sequence to search. For this example, let us search conserved sequences of length 11. The final input is a search keyword to look up the RCSB protein structure databank. Type in SARS spike protein. With these inputs, the rest of the calculations are taken care by the framework. In the background, all the conserved sequences of input length are automatically identified, and their 3D structures are retrieved. The structures of the antibodies are also retrieved simultaneously. This takes few minutes to run. Once retrieved, the 3D structures are stored as PDB for further processing. The final step is to perform high-throughput docking calculations. There are around 85 antigen-antibody pairs, and it takes a couple of hours on a laptop. It is easy to reduce the time to few minutes by running the workflow in parallel. So, with just 2 inputs, one could arrive at a reasonable guess of what an effective vaccine epitope might be. If you look at the color map here, each square shows the binding affinity between the corresponding antigen-antibody pair. Higher the number in a square, higher its binding affinity. The last 2 columns exhibit higher binding affinity towards all the antibodies. This is expected, as these sequences are in the receptor binding domain of the spike protein. This demonstration shows how, by looking at the binding affinities, one could predict a set of possible epitope candidates. Finally, predicting binding affinity is not the end of vaccine design, but the first step. Other crucial components include adjuvant and delivery systems design, with a lot of need for automation. We intend to eventually include those in the framework. With this, thanks to all the free-to-use packages out there. None of this would have been possible without the strong open-source community for computational biomolecular design and bioinformatics. Thanks to all the contributors who helped with several stages of the hackathon. And in the spirit of full automation, I am Google Text-to-Speech, voicing over for the video.
Great. Thank you very much. That was both very educational and enlightening to me. We'd like to open this up for questions now. Sharat, let's stick with you.
First of all, I'm just always astonished at how much opportunity there is for automation in biomedical research. And so I was very pleased to see something like this. I wonder whether vaccine candidate identification is always done this laboriously. I know you mentioned it in passing about other solutions, but can you say a little bit more about how this sort of vaccine evaluation is done now, and actually what similar solutions do exist? You showed a bunch of open source on which you build. How do people do it now?
So now mostly experimental design is just trial and error. And there are specified computational groups which work on these kind of throughput screening. But it would be great if people who actually design vaccine, who are experimentalists, can play around with a very, very easy framework. And that's why we started this whole thing. So there are a lot of open sources for vaccine design. As I mentioned before, it's hard to use them because it needs some significant programming skills or background with computation techniques. And there are a lot of easy to use web-based servers on the other hand. But the problem with web-based servers is you don't have any high throughput options there. So a framework to combine both of these is what we envisioned here.
Okay, so you enter those 3 parameters, UniProt IDs and so on, away you go.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Great, and we have another question from Dr. Robert Blazich.
Yeah, really cool use of open source software. It's pretty remarkable that those resources allow you to build this in the short time frame of this hackathon to do both the molecular simulation and the docking. As you mentioned, this is an iterative process. Do you have a plan for how the experimental results will feed back into these computational systems to help them be more refined the more they're used?
So that's a great question. So we do have some ideas for that. So an automated design framework, for example, would predict a certain protein structure and a particular protein binding affinity. So an experimentalist can go back to a lab and test it and then feedback to the framework that this is not working. So the framework will do this in an iterative manner in an automated fashion until it converges and finds something that is useful for an experimentalist to work with.
And is it a matter, what kind of data would be fed back? Is it affinity data, or is there other type of data that you'd feed back into your modeling system?
So it could be affinity data. If there is no 3D structure available, this would be 3D structure data as well.
Okay, thank you.
Great. And one more question from Darren Cook.
Yeah, thank you, and congratulations for the amount of hard work that you put in and progress you made in just 3 weeks. Question for you about the commercial viability of this. Do you plan to put this up for sale, or will this be left as open source?
So developing it further, we just wanted to make it free to use for academics and labs. So for non-commercial purposes, that's what we are looking at.
Okay, great. Thank you. Nice work.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much, Ashwin, and your entire project team from NASA and beyond. Next, we'd like to turn it over to Hazel Mann and Team Spara.
Hi, everyone. Hi, UCSF and judges. Thank you for having me today, and thank you for hanging on for the last presentation. I'm going to have a nifty next sign for Jenny, so I'm not driving her crazy doing my slides. Can you switch to next slides? I'd like you to meet my friend John. He leads a social enterprise that's partnered with over 70 hospitals that does COVID recuperative care for homeless, low-income elderly patients. So he really wants to prevent infections among patients in their rec rooms and dining halls, and he's worried about protecting his staff health. And he has reason to be concerned. They have 42% of all global deaths and infections have happened in long-term care facilities among the residents and staff. And then 89% of COVID patients exhibit a fever. So the healthcare leaders we've talked to in the last 3 weeks, they, in addition to the CDC, have all made temperature and symptom screenings among healthcare staff a requirement on their properties. But we noticed that there is a significant problem here. The first is getting staff to self-report symptoms is time-consuming and it's really hard to manage. John has to often assign additional resources for staff to do screenings on site in the morning. And it's prone to error and increases the risk of the screeners to COVID. And oftentimes his team is also really busy taking care of patients. They don't know that they're running a fever until 10 or 12 hours later. So what happens is a very dangerous game of telephone with symptom data, and it's ending up putting his clients, coworkers, and family members at risk. And so while we looked around and there are point solutions in this space, we really couldn't find anyone to pull this off on more of a company-wide solution basis and do high detection of high temperatures. And so we found this represents a $10 billion opportunity in the market. And what Spara wants to do is to give the healthcare world a completely new solution that protects staff health with real-time alerts of high temperatures, without the false alarms that waste PPE and increase infection. So we use an AI-powered sensor platform made of contactless self-service thermal kiosks. So these are already made of FDA-approved core components, and these are commoditized different pieces. And then we have these biosensors, which are really one of a kind. The only place they're manufactured in is in the EU. So these are Fitbit-like wearables. One is like an AirPod and it goes in your ear, and the other is the size of a silver dollar. And it's a really slim disc that you put into a chest strap or you tuck into a bra. And then the next things that we have as part of the platform is a mobile app that syncs to these devices, and then that syncs to a web platform as well, so admins can monitor among their teams. So let's see how this can work for Dawn. So for example, Dawn is a nurse at a highly impacted COVID facility. So in the morning, she wakes up and then she logs into her Spara app and enters in her information and confirms she's with her hospital. And then she enters in calibration information for the IoT device. After that, she enters in her symptoms for the day, and depending on what the hospital requires. And then based off her symptoms, she's issued an initial screening pass. So when she goes to the hospital, she goes to the screening area with the kiosk and she holds up the phone with the QR code. So next, the system recognizes that there's someone standing there, and it it kicks off its process in registering Dawn's QR code to her account, then reading her temperature. And if her temperature is normal, she's cleared to proceed and issued a pass for the day. If she doesn't pass, she's directed to a secondary screening area. So when Dawn's at work, she puts the wearable on and she starts working. And if her temperature is above baseline, she gets a warning that's sent through a vibration on her phone, so she doesn't have to take off PPE. Her manager, Morgan, can see his whole team's temperature all in one place, and this helps coordinate backup. So there's an automated system that runs on mobile that does all the push notifications, and it makes it very easy for their team to coordinate who's going to take over Dawn's place if she has to go home. So this makes life for both Morgan and Dawn a lot easier and a lot safer for everyone on their staff and as well as their clients. So what we see today is that SPAR is the only product on the market that has IP that protects privacy and thermal reads and does a simultaneous optical and thermal reading. We also have an AI partner to reduce costs of the hardware with the processing, and we're the only one to launch this on an enterprise level with clinically proven devices. For what we see as the business model is a SaaS-based subscription basis, we want to make this as affordable as possible. So we're pricing it at or near hardware costs and passing the savings on to the hospitals and making our money off of the software subscription, which is on a monthly basis. Our go-to-market strategy involves launching with vulnerable populations first, especially long-term care facilities, tracking in parallel with large hospitals, and also targeting high-risk wards where there's immunocompromised individuals. Our team is really the perfect one to launch SPAR's vision. We have a computer vision PhD and masters in engineering who have worked for Amazon, Oracle, Cisco, and Coinbase. So we plan to move ahead very quickly to address the market need. We're tinkering around with things for the nonprofit, but we're launching a first pilot this month in importing wearables starting in August. And then we think that now is very perfect time to launch. We don't need any HIPAA compliance or FDA approvals to get started. The healthcare operators are already doing this on a manual basis. They need a better solution. And what we ultimately want to get to is a unique, robust database that's able to predict symptoms before onset. So right now we're planning to raise a pre-seed round to cover hardware import and assembly costs as well as engineering. But the thing that we're most excited about is expanding this model to other massive markets, which include airlines, cruise liners, retail, dining, offices, and schools when they reopen. So we have really the right team, and we see a huge pain, and that SPAR is the solution. And it's the answer to protecting health worker lives in a way that is not temporary, like some of the PPE solution, but not as long-term as a vaccine needs. So we can start today to solve this problem, and we invite you to join us in becoming part of the answer. Thank you.
Excellent. Very, very interesting. Thank you very much, Hazel and Project SPAR. We're going to turn it over to a question from Dr. Isabella Allen.
All right. Hazel, I want to congratulate you for integrating all this. So I actually have a couple of small questions. So number one is, are all these pieces, now people are using physical, get your temperature as you come in. Has yours been validated against that so that we know that, I'm not even sure that the physical ones are as accurate as they should be. But,
yeah, that's a really good question. Jenny, can you scroll to the next slide? I have some backups for, there you go. So, the core components, they're FDA tested and clinically proven. So the variants for the FDA tested thermal camera cores are accurate to 0.1 degrees Celsius. If you scroll to the next one for the wearable, this one is accurate to the plus or minus 0.26 degrees Celsius. And then the in-ear wearable is accurate to the 0.1 degrees Celsius. So these are all things that are on the market that we're white labeling and reselling in the US because it just hasn't gone out of Europe. And then the FDA camera cores, they already passed all of the clearances needed for a 510K.
The other short question is, so I have a wearable do I get that every day and then turn it back in, for example, to be cleaned overnight or something? That's
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's true. So that's a good point. So all the wearables are IPX7, so they're waterproof, so they can be fully immersed in disinfectant fluid. So while you'd want to have one person maintain the same wearable, it would need to be disinfected at the end of the day, ideally. And these are both waterproof devices that allow that disinfecting process to take place.
Okay, thank you.
Great questions, Isabel. Thanks.
Great, and we have another question from Dr. Einer Sawyer, if you're there.
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, a really elegant presentation. I really appreciated your delivery and the way it was laid out. So thank you for that. You communicated the story very well. I think it's really badly needed. I'm not sure it's the only one out there, so I always hesitate a little bit when I hear that comment, because I know of other healthcare worker screenings that are going on that are both quantitative and qualitative symptom checkers combined with vital sign trackers. So just a caution around that, but I thought it was really well done. I like the project a lot. My questions are, some of them are a little bit on the technical side, because I've been in this space a little bit. One is that if you have a chest device, how are you getting core temperature, or are you cross-correlating that with the ear device? Because it's a curious thing. It's been hard for people to get core temperature off a chest device.
Yeah, it has been traditionally hard. So that's why this is one of the more recent products that only came out this year that does core body temperature. It's out of a EU German university. So all the research had gone into that, and it was originally targeted at athletic use, and they hadn't targeted toward more of a COVID pandemic situation, but they pivoted, and then I found them, and they want to be in the US. So we're one of the first distributors for the US for that. And you're right, core body temperature has been very, very hard to get, but this has been clinically tested in Switzerland and also Germany for that accuracy that I quoted. And for the in-ear device, that's EMA approved in Europe. So it's also independent. Where we want to get eventually with the data is an extremely low cost wrist wearable. Like you were saying, we would use the core temperature body reads from the other two and then back into a derived and imputed temperature that's not skin temp, that gets closer to core body temp, that would use machine learning to train the data for.
Great. And then the premise of this is that you feel like temperature alone or fever versus no fever is got some powerful predictive value in terms of being COVID positive is what I'm getting out of this. I saw your stat around 89% of COVID positive people exhibit a fever. I think the problem with that is, since we don't have adequate testing, and we do know there are asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic people, I think that number is a little risky. I was just going to say there are also other factors that can add predictive value. So if you started to decide to add other sensors, which you might, because you're going to have the capability to do that, but combining fever with cough or fever with resting heart rate, or even smell and taste changes, those things add predictive value to it. It's just kind of a phenomenon you're caught in where we don't have adequate testing, so you don't know what the denominator is, and so.
I totally agree.
I'd love to talk with you further about it, but I can tell that you've put a lot of thought into it and that you've done the homework. I had two other questions. I'll make them quick. One is, so I would think you'd want to do this upstream of people coming to work, because for resource allocation, staffing, et cetera, it would be more effective for the institution, also for the individual, if they knew 4 hours, 8 hours, or 12 hours ahead that they were generating a pattern that looked suspicious for being infected, rather than when they get to the door of work. Mm-hmm. I just wondered what your thoughts were on that, because I know your founder is actually in that dilemma.
Yeah, for sure. So the thing that we're kind of struggling with in the research is requiring employees after work to wear a device. So we're not sure what the enforceability of that is in Europe and in the US. Ideally, yeah, we'd want to wear them at night because if you our febrile, it shows more up at night than in the morning. So ideally, that's what we would want to take place. But that's why we have the symptom checker. We'd also say the symptom checker that they do in the morning if they feel they need to do it at night. And these are healthcare folks, so I'd assume they're more highly educated and would recognize the need to do it. If they need to do it after they get off of work and entering those symptoms because they feel an onset of something, there would have to be some training on the organization side to enforce that. So I agree with you. That's why we have the symptom check in the survey to correlate those values along with the quantitative data from the devices.
Great. And then finally, do you then forward them to testing?
Yes, this is an early warning system. So the FDA camera is they can do two things, FDA versus non-FDA camera. It's not meant, the wearables aren't meant as a diagnostic device. We'd forward them to screening and testing with FDA cleared devices at that point.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions.
Yes, thank you, Hazel. I would love this to extend beyond the COVID-19 times. Too many people go to work sick or send their kids sick to school. So it'd be nice to stop that.
Yeah. Agreed.
But anyway, and thank you to all of our showcase presenters for highlighting tonight what can be accomplished in such a short amount of time. So especially when a diversity of people come together to solve our most pressing issues around the COVID-19 pandemic. An even bigger thank you to all of the hackathon participants. We're definitely humbled and so excited by all of these projects. And we really encourage everyone to keep going forward. So with that, I'd like to give some resources for continuing to develop these projects into real solutions. And we're a little short on time, so I'm going to run through this really quickly, but please check out these opportunities. Check them out. The Bay Area National Science Foundation Innovation Core. They offer free monthly education sessions to accelerate science and technology entrepreneurship. And this is open to everyone. It's in collaboration from UC Berkeley, UCSF, and Stanford. Check it out. Next is the UCSF Health Hub. It's also open to everyone, and it connects digital health and health tech companies to advisors, investors, or mentors as needed. The Startup Legal Garage offers free legal fees for select startups, so all are invited to apply. And definitely check it out soon because the application window is opening in next week, I believe. Finally, UC Launch is a fantastic 3-month accelerator. This one is open to UC affiliated people though, so UCLA students, faculty, and alum. Definitely stay tuned to this as well, as applications are open soon for their fall cohort. Lastly, the Big Ideas Contest is open to all UC students. This happens every year, but this year they will have a separate COVID-19 track. So I definitely encourage everyone to keep going, and I really look forward to seeing what's next for all of these projects. I would now like to introduce Charles Hart, our director of the UCSF Catalyst Program.
Thank you, Jenny. Firstly, I too want to reiterate our thanks to all the project teams for taking the initiative to join the hackathon. And I also want to again thank all the different organizations that provided the awards, both the monetary awards and the in-kind services and mentoring sessions for the awarded teams. And again, thanks to the judges for their participation. But finally, I want to give very special thanks. Actually, if I can have the next slide. Yeah, thanks. I want to give very special thanks to Jenny Jancy and Nate Prorak, who together created this, organized it, and ran it, and did a great job. So thank you to Jenny, and thank you to Nate. And I also want to thank everyone that tuned in, logged in, and hope you have a very nice rest of the evening.